Okay, so here's the question you're asking about. So for you, this was 6.2, number 3. It says, find the margin of error for the given values of C, S, and N. So, doesn't say it explicitly, but you should recognize, well, this is from the section on confidence intervals. And of course, if it says margin of error, then it must be talking about a confidence interval. Okay, so it's not explicitly asking for confidence interval, but it is asking for the margin of error. So the procedure is just about the same as making a confidence interval. So here's what we know. So when we do a confidence interval, let's see. Okay. So we make a confidence interval. So there's 3 different formulas for a confidence interval in general. Actually, let me write the general formula. It's always sample mean plus or minus critical value times the standard deviation of the distribution. Okay. Now, this question is asking about so there are 3 versions of this. So one version would be the sample mean x bar plus or minus the critical value when it's z times the standard deviation, which in this case would be sigma x bar. Another version of this would be x bar, so I should say, and this is a confidence interval for mu. There's also a confidence interval for mu, but if you do not have sigma, then you're going to be working with the t distribution, and that would be S for x bar. And then also you could be making a confidence interval for p hat. Sorry, confidence interval for p, excuse me. And then that would be p hat plus or minus z times sigma for p hat. So basically, for our purposes, we can make a confidence interval either for mu or for p. And for mu, there's 2 different formulas, and then for p, we've only got the one formula for doing that. Okay. So the first thing is to recognize that that we're really talking about confidence intervals here. Next is to recognize we're only asking about the margin of error. So when you're making a confidence interval, what is your margin of error? Your margin of error is everything after the plus minus. So just looking at the first formula, that is your margin of error, and the notation we use for that is E. So margin of error, it's asking about that piece from the confidence interval. Next, we need to figure out which formula we're actually using. So notice that we are given a value for S. So if you're given a value for S, you immediately know which formula it has to be. It's got to be the second one, the confidence interval for mu, where we're using S where we're using S, and then where we're using the t distribution. So now that we've got it all sorted out, we know exactly what we need to figure out. You need to find the t-score, and you need to find the standard deviation, S for x bar. And then, of course, multiply. So first we have to find t. So how do we find t? So to find t, let's see. So in this case, actually, let me draw the picture first. So to find t, what are we doing? Well, what we're given is the confidence level. So their notation is C represents the confidence level. So what does the graph look like for a confidence interval? 0 in the middle. In this case, it's a t distribution. For a confidence interval, you've got a fat middle, which is your confidence level, which in this case is 0.90. So if that is your confidence level, which is in the middle, we can also figure out what's in the tails. So there's left over in both tails is 1 minus 0.90, which is 0.10. But then what's in each tail? In each tail, just split it in half. So 0.05. So in each tail, there's going to be 0.05. And so now the question is, if those are the areas that we know, what is the t-score? And in order to do that, we go to StatDisk. So give me one moment while I pull up StatDisk. Okay. Now, okay. So using StatDisk, go analysis, probability distribution, student t-distribution. And now we put in what we need. So first of all, with the t-distribution, you need to write in degrees of freedom. Let's go back over here. So for the t-distribution, we should know that, or we'll need that, the degrees of freedom, which we write as df, is n minus 1. In this case, they tell you n is 9, so this is just 8. So degrees of freedom is 8. We don't know the t-value. We know the area to the right of the t-score. So looking at our graph, we can see that the area to the right is 0.05. So type that in, click evaluate, and that tells us what we need. What's the t-score? So what we see is that the t-score is 1.859546. So I'm going to fill that in. So that's the t-score. And then, of course, the t-score on the left is the negative version, but we won't need that. Okay, so now we found t. So next we need to find sx bar. So what is sx bar? That's just by the formula s divided by the square root of n. So they tell us s is 6 divided by the square root of n, that's the square root of 9. Well, that's just 6 over 3, so that's just 2. That was the easy part. And now to find the margin of error, it's t times sx bar. So E equals t, which was 1.859546, times sx bar, which is 2, and then whatever the calculator says for that. Okay. Okay. So calculator, oops. Okay. 1.859546 times 2. Okay. So 3.719092. And then I'm sure it says it says round to 1 decimal place is needed. So rounding this to 1 decimal place, I just get 3.7.